Welcome back to USALA Media. I'm your host, Justin Michaud, and you are watching another USALA Exclusive. And I'm actually with an awesome gentleman by the name of Dr. Mitch Greene. And I would like to introduce him right away so we can just go ahead and get right into this great show. Thank you for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you, Justin. I'm so happy to see you again.
Thank you. It's been, I don't know, about a year or so.
At least a year, yes.
I met you, of course, through the NXT Lacrosse Club, and because we had started the More Than a Club podcast. And when they said they were going to get a sports psychologist on, I thought that was awesome. And honestly, I didn't even give a thought to like sports psychology.
Right.
And I know that in your business, you are a clinical and a sports psychologist.
Right.
Could you sort of give a little bit of a difference between the two?
Yeah. I have a PhD in clinical psychology. That's really how I started my career. And having a clinical psychology degree means you're trained in counseling around people with diagnosable conditions, people with life difficulties, family difficulties, relationship difficulties, difficulties managing their emotions. What I did about 10 years into my career is I kind of added this specialty in sports, where I kind of do almost everything that I did as a traditional clinical psychologist, but in the realm of sport. So individual athletes, teams, coaches who struggle with relationship issues, managing emotions, managing challenging thoughts, difficulty managing interpersonal relationships. I kind of map that on to the world of sports. So to be a clinical sports psychologist, it's a little bit of a made-up term. It's not a term that we normally use, but it does explain kind of what somebody like what I do, which is I'm a clinician with a specialty in the sports arena.
Okay, all right. I know that you wrote a book. We'll definitely get into that. But one of the greatest things I ever heard, and an awesome phrase that you came up with, is mind chatter. Now, could you just explain a little bit what mind chatter is, and is it directly only correlated to sports?
Sure. So I came up with the term chatter, mind chatter, to describe the doubts and the second guessing and the negative thinking that I was seeing so many of these athletes come into my office struggling with, whether they were a junior athlete, let's say competing at NXT Lacrosse, or a pro or an Olympic athlete that I worked with that also had, too much going on in their head. And I knew this term chatter, mind chatter, had something to it because even after a first session with somebody, they would come back for a second session and say, oh, you mentioned that term mind chatter. Yeah, my mind chatter got really bad before I scored a goal, and then my mind chatter kind of went away, or I was really nervous and chattery. So it really told me early on in my career that there's something to this term mind chatter. But absolutely, it goes well beyond sports. We all have mind chatter. I do, you do, the top level pros or the top level performers in the world do, as do those just starting out. Everybody at some point, when they're competing or showing up on a high stakes, something that feels like a high stakes environment, are going to have the doubts and the second guessing showing up. And that's kind of what the book's about. How do you manage it so it doesn't manage you?
Okay. Can you possibly give an example of the last time you experienced mind chatter in your life?
I can. It's actually an example from about a month ago, Justin. Driving locally here on the New Jersey Turnpike in one of the worst rainstorms possible, with my family in the car. And so chatter always shows up when there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot at stake. That could, of course, be in a tournament setting, but this was in my automobile with my family in a huge rainstorm, and my mind started pumping out messages of, what if we go off the road? What if we get hit by a tractor trailer? What if you don't make it home? What if this is the last time we're together? What if you're responsible for your family's demise? I mean, I had a real parade of doubts flowing through my mind, and I had to do what I train other people to do, which is to hear the chatter but not really listen to it, and stay focused on what was important in that moment, which was how calm I could keep myself and how focused I could stay on the road.
Can you describe it as almost like do you hear like a little voice? Is it like your own voice? Just sort of almost like your own voice is a mantra, but not in a good mantra.
Yes, it's my own voice. It sounds like me, but what I teach athletes, and I was able to recognize myself, it's the voice that only has one agenda in mind, which is to catastrophize what's going on in the moment and create the worst case scenario in that moment. So yeah, it sounds a lot like me. That's why it's so hard sometimes to be able to distinguish you from your chatter. But I recognize it by its familiar theme and its familiar tone, which is about what could go wrong. And it was normal to have chatter in that situation, by the way. It wasn't just like it's normal for an athlete to have chatter in a high performance situation. So I wasn't getting on myself for having all those doubts, but I was able to kind of push it away so I could stay focused, because that was most important, was how am I going to get home safely at that point?
I feel like myself, starting to understand more what the mind chatter was. I guess I had been experiencing it in my life personally, not really through sports because I wasn't really a big sports person, but I had recently got into disc golf. And now I guess when you had mentioned it for sports, it sort of started to make more sense to me because I was experiencing that a little bit more in disc golf, but also recognizing that, oh wait, I'm experiencing a chatter too sometimes in life.
That's right. That's right. And I think the best feedback I've gotten about my book so far is this doesn't just apply to the game of sports, it applies to the game of life. And I had to make a decision when I was writing the book. Do I just write it about sports? Because I had a lot of people say, like you do, of course this goes beyond sports. I decided, at least for my first book, I wanted to stay true to the world of sports. But, everything that I do and I put in that book, I do myself. I do myself, whether I'm driving that car in that example that I just gave you, or I'm trying to manage a big talk I'm giving in front of thousands of people, or even in the writing of the book. I had a chattery voice saying, who's going to read this? Is this really worth it? Is this just repeating stuff that people already know? Why are you bothering with it? But again, being able to recognize that my chatter was just doing what it does, I wasn't able to spend too much time fighting with myself. And I think that's maybe what you're describing in your own life, is we sometimes get into fights with ourselves that we can't win. And my approach tries to get you out of the fight stage and kind of more in the flow stage by not just, resisting this chattery voice.
Flow state is an amazing feeling.
Amazing feeling.
Or some, I guess, might refer to it as the alpha state, right? Is that when your alpha brain waves are kicking in, when you're just in this, you're super highly focused? And it's so funny because that could just go, bye, just like that. And it's happened to me. Again, I have to use disc golf for my example, just because it's like, I could be playing birdie 4 holes in a row. To me, I'm locked in to every throw that I've done, off my drives, my putts, everything I'm doing. I'm locked in. That's why I just birdied 4 holes in a row. And then all of a sudden, boom, double bogey happens. And you're like, and it takes you completely out of the mindset that you were just in. That's right. And now you're sort of what they call, you're on the struggle bus.
That's right. That's right. And actually, the research varies, but basically people say you're about in the zone about 40% of the time when you're competing, whether you're a disc golfer or a baseball player. So my work is often trying to get people to prepare for the fact that there's going to be you trying to get in the zone, but there's going to be this counter voice that's trying to pull you out of it. So when you're in the zone, as you said, you don't need someone like me. I'm going to get out of your way. But you need to be prepared that on the 8th hole, for example, the struggle bus is going to show up. And instead of panicking at that point and being so hard on yourself or thinking you've messed up because now you're out of the zone, I need people to not be caught by surprise by that. I need them to be like, okay, I knew something like this could happen. Here's how I'm going to respond to it. So instead of the 8th hole leading to a slow demise, maybe you sort of, you struggle for a bit, but then you give yourself an opportunity to get back to the level of play you had before.
Absolutely. And that's where a lot of the negative self-talk can come in. Right. Oh, you idiot. You're so stupid. Why did you do that? And a lot of the time I find myself just in an angry outburst because I did hit that tree, or you had a disc in your hand and you put it down and you went through the other one. Why didn't you just trust your gut?
Yeah.
And I feel like it's something that I constantly struggle with. So one of the things that I did start to fix out there was, well, I play a lot in the woods. So there's a lot of trees and small gaps you got to get that disc through. Otherwise, you're going to be on the struggle bus.
Yeah, sure.
So instead of saying, don't hit that tree,
Right.
because guess what I would do? Hit the tree. Square on. Boom, bang, every time.
Yeah.
I go, hit the gap.
Yeah.
You're going to hit the gap. And just say, you're going to hit the gap. You're going to hit the gap. Do I hit the gap all the time? No, but I've started to do it a lot more.
Yeah, it reminds me of the rock climbers who say, you know, you really don't want to be thinking don't fall because it's got the word don't in it, and it has the word fall in it. And I know from my mountain biking days, right? Mountain biking in terms of you see where the treacherous sort of terrain is, and all of a sudden, if you're focused on that, your wheel's going to go right towards it. So I love these mind games, right? I love being able to, now that you know this, now you have an approach to the way you play disc golf that hopefully puts you in a better position to succeed. What I work on is the inner game, though, too. So there's that you suck, you're never going to be able to figure this out. Kind of instead of buying into all of that, seeing that voice as sort of a predictable, expected script that kind of shows up on game day or on, you know, competition day. It might not show up when you're out there just in practicing, just sort of trying to, you know, figure out kind of your strategy for an upcoming competition. Why? Because the stakes aren't high. There's nothing that's seemingly at risk. But as soon as chatter recognizes it's competition day, it won't just raise the stakes. It'll blow them out of the water. And all of a sudden, one mistake turns into a catastrophe. So you need to be prepared that that's what chatter is going to do and how you want to respond to it. Instead of the criticism, you want to focus on correction. Instead of saying, I suck, you want to say, okay, Justin, refocus, rescope your shot, focus more on the gap than the trees. What happens is we just go right into criticism, fear of being judged, fear of not meeting expectations. And of course, it's hard to play your best, your best disc golf when the chatter is barking at you.
Absolutely. And I would love to say that I don't get chatter when tournaments are at my local course, because it's like, oh, you know this course so well, Beck. You've played this, you know you can shoot this score. And then every single time I play a tournament, I don't know what happens. My arm's like, nah, I don't feel like it.
Yeah.
It just forgets how to play it.
Yeah. I know you would think it's your local course. So what's the big deal? I have top level, like pro golfers will come and just play with their friends at a local course here. And they say to me, like, it's the worst golf I ever played, because they're so nervous because now they have to play like the pro golfer that they are. And if somebody who's just a regular old amateur starts sneaking up and beating them, you know, it's a mental challenge. I get it. It's seemingly easy to just show up. You're a pro, you know, it's a local course. Who cares? But chatter cares. That's part of the point. You won't want to care, but chatter always cares, and it always cares way too much.
And I picture it as your own self as a devil.
Yeah.
Just come on, you're just angry. Get more angry, and you feed into it. And like I will admit, I sometimes unfortunately feed into the monster that's telling me to come on, get angry, because that's how you're gonna do better. No, I'm gonna do worse.
Yes, and instead of fighting with that devil, though, my approach in the book kind of describes you're kind of making room for it. You're kind of saying, all right, Mr. Devil or Chatter, you're going to come along. I understand I can't stop you from coming along. You're going to show up when I bogey, for sure, or double bogey, even doubly sure. But I'm going to kind of like be like, okay, I hear what you have to say. I knew you were going to come along, but now I'm going to move my mind to refocus on what I need to do. Versus an athlete saying, I can't be thinking that. I can't have that come along on the ride with me. I'm saying, no, let it come, but make sure you keep it in its proper place, which is over there with minimal influence.
Yeah, absolutely. You stay over there.
Yeah, you stay over there. We have an Olympic skier, just to quickly say, she would describe that she would tell her chatter to wait over there and watch her do what she does. And we thought that was so wonderfully sassy. She competed in Beijing, such great attitude. And it kind of said, I recognize that it's going to be here, but I'm in charge, not you're my chatter.
I started recently taking deep breaths before shots
There you go.
and just telling myself positive reinforcement, dude, you got this. And that's it. Just, dude, you got this.
Yeah. And that's a whole lot better than letting chatter kind of say, what if you don't have it? What, right?
Right, exactly.
And so I'd much rather err on your side of things than listening to chatter. And that's a choice that people have in life, off the course, just in life, you know, where we don't realize we have as much choice about what thoughts we listen to and buy into. If you could recognize that there are sort of two parallel series of voices going on in your head at once, you can begin to say, okay, that one isn't the one I want to choose. Here's the one I want to choose to make my life better.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, to sidestep mind chatter at the moment, and we're sort of getting back to like a negative reinforcement in a way. Now, I had witnessed down in Virginia Beach the different, it was U14, U16, and U19. All of those teams they're all this like whatever. I'm just going to use the example that I know is the Eagles, Westchester. They're the Eagles from Westchester. So they had their U14, U6, and they won every tournament. They got the first place in everything, right? And they were the most tough, loving coaches I have ever heard. Yeah. What are you doing? You're stupid. You're being so stupid. You're careless. And people are like, what? But the parents go, I paid for this.
Yeah.
Because they win.
Yeah.
And it was something to it. Like those girls fed off of it. I could see them as I'm filming. I'm like, whoa. Instead of them being like mad or down, they knew that they were, I guess, being stupid because they did something that they shouldn't have done. So to them, they were like, when I go back out there, I'm going to correct it. And you know what they did? Went right back out and scored, made the correction. Yeah. And then every time, it would be like 10-1, 12-0. That's how these teams were. They were the most tough, loving coaches I've ever heard, but actually had a positive result.
Well, certainly a positive result on the outside. In other words, the score was a winning score. They dominated. The girls won. They responded to the coaching. Of course, as a psychologist, I'm always interested in the internal lives of these young women and how they really, really took it. And if they are okay on the inside. I know that they produce on the outside, but sometimes that's not the whole story. I think the other thing with tough love coaches, and maybe this is an example, is the love has to be there. You can't do tough love without the love. And so perhaps these young women really sense that this coach, no matter how she would come across and how harsh she sounded, and she sounded pretty harsh, that the love was there. In other words, maybe she was able to show these girls, this isn't personal, this isn't me giving you the finger and telling you you suck and that it's not about you, but what the actions you took sucked, I guess, in this case, and that I need you to change how you act versus them taking it like they really feel like they suck. And I'd like to believe that is what helped make her successful. And again, if you measure success just by the results, like it was clearly a win. I'm always interested in how these girls really felt on the inside. And does it have to be so extreme in order for these girls to be successful? I'd like to think that maybe not.
I mean, I definitely did witness some positive reinforcement. Obviously, when they did well, they were like, that was great. But they definitely, when they had their own team meetings, they were always over, like in the shade, away from everyone, talking very low. They weren't being berated. So I think in that moment,
maybe that's where the love shows.
That's where all the love really is, and they know that. Listen, if you don't perform, we're gonna yell at you, basically. And I guess that's the acceptance, because I mean they dominated so well. But yeah, like what is the ultimate? Not, I wouldn't say damage, but what is the ultimate results in their mind themselves? Are they sort of saying that they're okay with it, but they're really deep down they're not?
Well, I don't know, obviously, in this case. What I tend to see in my office is people who are so stressed out about going to play for particular coaches. Most coaches are terrific. I don't want to suggest that they're not. But these are the types of kids that could be the types of kids that are so afraid that they play from fear, and they are so, the lead up to a game or the lead up to a practice, because they don't know when the coach is might going to explode on them. Again, I'm not suggesting that's this situation, but in my own experience, those are the kids that I see that I really worry about, that they never feel good enough, that they never feel acknowledged enough. And maybe that's not the case with this coach, but there are some coaches that do the tough love, but it's all the tough and they're missing the love. And those kids can really suffer internally.
Yeah.
They
Absolutely.
really
I think I witness that every summer when I'm at tournaments, especially with the boys. 'Cause some of these coaches are real. Woof.
Yeah.
And then that stops. And then guess what happens if they lose? I got mom and dad over here.
Well,
And that's like, wow, man.
the car
that's
ride home.
double duty.
The car ride home for some of those kids, right, where they say, how come in the second quarter you dropped the ground ball and why did you turn the ball over then? And then you're right. Those are the kids and the families that we see here. And I, a lot of parents want to do, of course, right by their kids and are just trying to help. But sometimes they don't realize that the help and the advice becomes more stress and pressure. And so I need to help these parents understand that, particularly talking about the game in the car right after you leave that tournament where things did not go well, is the worst time to really be getting into it with them, because it's a tight little capsule that you're driving in and there's no escape.
Nowhere to go.
You need about 24 hours sometimes after those types of games when you really heard it from your coach and you've messed up, for parents maybe to start to sort of talk to their kids if they feel like they need to about what happened. But the kids more and more, and the parents' identity are so wrapped up in their sport. And that's why we're talking about this, is that critical coaches have been around for a long time, but now even more so, kids identify with their sport. They feel like they are their sport. So when they get criticized, they're fragile. They can't really handle it. Some of that's not the coach's fault per se. It's just the current state of youth sports if we focus on youth sports.
Absolutely. And I guess another thing I noticed that you love to use during with your social medias is hashtag courage over confidence.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, when the doubts are flying and the nerves are flying and the chatter is chattering as you're trying to get ready for a game, the truth is, and the athletes always recognize it, it's really hard to be confident. And probably the number one reason people come in and talk to me overall is like, Dr. Greene, I lost my confidence. I had it, I lost it, I used to have it, I had it in this game, but I didn't have it in this game. And so I understand when the chatter is going, the high stakes game is approaching and the doubts and the second guessing and the negative thinking are approaching, just trying to tell yourself to be confident is really hard. It's not like a light switch kind of moment. You can't just be confident. And in fact, some people try to just tell themselves to be confident and then they feel worse because they're like, I can't even do the confidence thing right. Courage over confidence is saying, look, as you're getting ready for that tournament, it's not really about confidence. You don't need to be more confident. This is really an act of courage. And you can't be courageous by definition except in the presence of doubt and fear. So I try to get them to see this as an opportunity for them to be courageous when they go out there. Not, I have to be confident, but what would it mean to you, Joey or Jane, to think about this as an opportunity to be courageous? What would courage look like or sound like to you? It might be like the courage to have those doubts, but not let those doubts determine where you're going to focus or how you're going to play. The courage to hear mom and dad yelling from the sidelines, but not making mom and dad's voice the loudest one in your head, making your voice the one that's loudest in your head. The courage to stay focused on the goals that you have for the first quarter or the first half. And who in your life, I might ask them, do you see as courageous? They might come up with an uncle or an aunt or a dog that fought through cancer. I want them to summon up images even, not just words, of courageousness and get them to think that really is how they were going to show up in the game. They don't need to be confident. Confidence sometimes comes after you play well. Oh, you score a goal, you get a couple of assists. Okay, now you got a little swag and you got a little confidence. Okay, but sometimes the way to get there is through courage.
I think I often confuse anxiety and excitement. To me, I feel like they're very similar. Yeah. And I've had friends tell me, I feel like you have a lot of anxiety. And I'm like, no, I'm just excited. They're like, yeah. So could you maybe just explain the difference between excitement and anxiety? Because they feel relatively the same, but I think I'm starting to understand what anxiety is.
Could I ask what you're coming to understand it to be?
More starting to be, instead of excitement, it's more of panic, more of okay, I'm not going to wake up for that. I got to make sure I set the alarm, and then I set the alarm. But every time I have to go and do an event, I wake up 50, 60 times a night throughout the night because I don't know. Something is going on up here. Like, you're not going to wake up. You got to do this. You have to do this. You're going to perform. You got to. I have, I guess, this giant mind chatter of of going, you need to make sure you perform at 1,000%, not 100%.
Yeah. Well, anytime you get outside your comfort zone, and so sometimes doing events, comfort zone for you would be, getting up, having your coffee, going to the office, and kind of doing things kind of in where there's no stakes involved. There's really no public potential for judgment or someone commenting or criticizing your work. But there's a part of you, Justin, that clearly, and there's a part of me, and there's a part of everyone that doesn't want to just stay with the status quo. So you take on events, you take on opportunities to say yes. You do that because there's a part of you that wants to grow and wants to learn and is excited by meeting new people. I can tell just from meeting you and knowing you a bit, and from getting involved in really interesting conversations. So to me, you choose these things because of excitement, but what happens is the chatter, the anxiety starts to also show up in these very same situations because you're outside of the comfort zone. And that anxiety, chattery voice says, I'm not saying I could speak for you, but this is what happens. What if you mess up? What if people don't think as much of you as you thought? What if you don't deliver the deliverables at the level that they thought? What if you don't meet expectations? So I think they're parallel processes that happen, or two sides of the same coin, which is you're excited because you want to challenge yourself, to go beyond the status quo. But what comes along with that territory is a chattery voice that says, what if it all goes wrong? So I think I want you to see them as parallel processes that happen together. What I want you to work on, and I work on with my athletes, if this is your chatter and this is your excitement, instead of chatter sort of being on top of you, I want to flip it. That excitement is here, and we learn some of the strategies through the night to help us sleep better, et cetera, to keep chatter where it belongs. Because if we go into events, sports or otherwise, with chatter leading the show, all of a sudden it kind of takes the fun out of what's supposed to be, an exciting growth experience.
And last Friday, I had a great example of there was zero chatter in my game that day because I simply got so excited because I got brand new discs that I'd been looking for at a store, and they had them. And after I left the store, I just felt like this rush of like, wow, man, I can't wait. And I hadn't felt that way in a while about playing. And then, man, I played well.
And that's what keeps you going. So because you love the challenge of it. New equipment means, maybe you could fine tune your game even more. And that, often remembering why we're doing this is part of getting reconnected to the excitement.
Absolutely.
Because chatter will make us forget it because it's thinking about all the possible hazards and consequences of a bad result. But you remembering like why I do this, because I love the challenge of it. I love fine tuning my game. I love trying to outsmart the opponent. I love, all the things that bring you to disc golf will help you. The why will help you keep the excitement up here and the chatter down here.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm hoping I can now change everything into just pure excitement and, have that chatters. You know what? You sit over in the car. I'll be done.
Yes.
In a little bit.
Yes.
And we can have a conversation on the way home if you want.
Yeah.
Just not during my game.
I love it. I love it. Putting it in its place. Absolutely.
It is funny because, like I was telling you, like I had a podcast for 10 years, and it didn't matter if it was the second year or the seventh year. No matter who came over to be interviewed, I felt the anxiety, the nervousness, the everything. And I'm like, man, you should be like a pro at this right now. It was I'm so excited to film it. So it's like the worlds were colliding of like excitement and anxiety. And it was just like, wow, it's too much for me after a little while. I'm like, I don't like this feeling.
It could be too much even for the pros. And as you've seen, more and more professionals and Olympians are sharing their stories. Simone Biles may be one of the most famous ones. By now, you would think that her routines are pretty rote because because she's done them thousands of times and she's the best in the world. But as we saw in the last Olympics, even she could start to get caught up in the I don't know how to do this anymore type of chattery thinking. And so, yeah, give yourself some grace, Justin, and some space to understand that the mind is always looking for trouble. It's always looking to protect us from possible dangers, whether you're on your local course or you're competing in a big stakes competition. So the idea is to not think there's anything wrong with you for having it, that you're not a coward, you're not a wimp. And that's a big part of my book, and that's a big part of my emphasis for those who have thought of themselves as like less than or wimpy or mentally not tough. Nonsense. You are mentally tough. It's just chatter goes on duty anytime it senses, we're outside that comfort zone.
And you and I both know that we are both mentally tough because we have done Go Rock challenges. And that is, I don't care about the physical. That is seriously 100% mental.
Absolutely 100% mental. Going through the night or going beyond where your mind is saying you're too tired, as you know. And the beautiful thing about Go Rock, who don't know, is right, you've got a team around you, and the strength is in your brothers or your sisters who are helping you push them, and sometimes they're pushing you, and together you feel like we're going to do this. That's an amazing experience.
Absolutely. You do kind of feel like, I wouldn't say $1 million because I don't know what it's like to have $1 million, but you do feel you're definitely butt kicked and down and tired. But man, there's something about it. You're just like, wow, I just did that. That's awesome. You know. And so that's also a great feeling to take home with you. You just you're beat down and beat up, but guess what? You did it, and that's
right.
Look what I can do.
Right.
And that right there, right, is enough positive reinforcement to be like, I know what I'm about. I know the things that I can do. Yeah. With a bit of a challenge and sort of the pain that goes through that. You just got to work through it.
And you got to remember those things. Sometimes when people get on, let's say you're out competing in disc golf, you might think, well, what does this have to do with Go Rock? But you want to remember sometimes in Go Rock where you thought, I don't know if I can do this, or my chatter is saying you can't keep going, and you did, and you finished. Like, it's basically the same thing in disc golf, but different, which is there's still that voice that says, I don't know if you can do this, or, you suck, or, you want to take those training experiences or outworldly experiences where you rose up and showed up and bring them into your life or bring them into your sport. Sometimes I feel people forget how to build that bridge from one experience to the next. And that's sometimes part of what I need to do is remind them of that.
Absolutely. And I actually just finished up a project with a good friend of mine, John Bear, and he wrote a book. And he also, that I was telling you earlier, I recorded his audio book with him. Yeah. Since then, we had reconnected about 2 years later after that. And he basically was telling me that he wasn't okay. I'm like asking, hey, how are you? And he's like, not that good. And he goes, but I'm working on a website. He goes, you see how you just asked me how I've been, and I told you that I haven't really been good. He goes, that's the first step of me not lying to myself and lying to you. Wow. He goes, because most of the time when somebody goes, hey man, how you doing? Right. And if let's say my pet just died, but I don't want to burden you. I'm all right. Yeah. I just lied. Yeah. So it's his reinforcement is it's okay to not be okay. Right. And it's okay to be able to tell people, especially your family and friends, absolutely, they should be there for you. You're not burdening them. Yeah. It's okay to tell them, oh man, I'm not okay. I'm thinking about this happened, or I just lost my job and I don't know what to do. Like, there's people that will be there by your side to help you. And he didn't feel like he had that up until like he really needed to start doing that. And he wanted to then do it for himself, but then goes, wait a minute, I can now try to help people. So we created a website, we did a video and everything. That's awesome. And basically we filmed the things that he goes through in life, the anxieties, all the stuff that he does in life to be able to say that I am not okay. And he has t-shirts made that says, I am not okay.
Oh, there you go.
And so it's
particularly for men, don't you think sometimes men are less willing to be vulnerable?
Yes.
Because they see it as a sign of weakness that they're on the struggle bus in life. And so how inspirational that he is, and he's turning something into a positive and trying to help others, which of course only helps him.
Absolutely.
As well.
And the way we sort of reconnected on this I am not okay thing is, unfortunately, when I was out playing at Sedgley Woods we have the outback. So we have the front 9, the back 9, and then the outback. So we have 27 holes there.
Oh, I didn't know.
So the outback is like way deep in the woods, and I was practicing for the tournament. And unfortunately, I was about 80 feet away when I discovered that a young gentleman had hung himself behind the basket. And man, I've never had such panic in my life, and never witnessed. Wow. I didn't know what to do. Like, the example I always use, like, in the scary movies, when you got your keys in your hand and you're at your door and you're like, oh, okay. I'm like, and I'm always yelling, I'm like, really? You couldn't get your key in the door? I couldn't remember the code to my phone to dial 911. So I told him that story, and he was like, oh my God. And then he told me about I am not okay. Because he had asked me, and I told him legit, like, I am not. I need to tell you the story.
After witnessing something like that, absolutely.
And unfortunately, his older brother committed suicide the same way when he was younger.
Gosh.
So this kind of like tied us together a little bit more.
Yeah.
So, I was like, absolutely, I want to do this project with you. And so, like, we just kind of finished it up recently, and we're sort of chopping up some of it now, but like,
because you just don't know who's really that just example makes me think this person in the woods or his brother, like, you just
I feel so bad for his family. Terrible. And him. Terrible. Like, he got to that point. Yeah. Got to that point where nothing else but to take your own life is the answer.
Yeah, people often don't want to, in those situations, they don't want to die, but they just want the pain to stop. And I was just this weekend at an event for a charity that we do some work alongside of called Hope for Haley. And I really resonated. She was a high school, I think, junior and an athlete. And so, I have 3 daughters of my own. And I think, God bless this family. And they had a beautiful event in her honor. And I'm so moved to try to, like you are trying to do and your friend is trying to do, is just reach out to let anyone know if they're feeling that kind of struggle, that there are choices you can make, there are people who can get it, and try to help you live another day.
Absolutely. And I really do feel that we're sort of in a stage in our society right now where mental health is, and it's not healthy, like, it's unhealthy mental health that I am seeing. And as a psychologist, could you give some examples for people to be able to change their mental health into a positive way, or some exercises or something they can do?
Well, sure. I think, some of the most important things that people need to understand is when you're feeling as bad as you might be feeling, we sometimes call about doing the opposite. It's the hardest thing to do. Like, there's everything about how you're feeling at the moment says, I don't want to leave the couch. I don't want to get out of bed. But really, if you were able to get outside, let's say in nature for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, you don't need to go for a run. You don't need to do anything like that. You just need to get out and go for a walk. Can begin to shift your mood, can begin to shift the neurochemicals in your brain. Of course, reaching out for help and sort of letting somebody know that you're not okay, of course, is part of it. Seeking professional help, of course, is one of my biases. I want someone to talk to. It could be to your intern. It could be talking to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and just beginning the process of asking for help, which is sort of the hardest part of it. The kinds of things that can shift your mood too are music, of course, a change in diet. These days also, you don't need to have a lot of money to get the kind of help you want. There's online now virtual therapy with BetterHelp and some of these other companies that also, where you don't even necessarily need to leave your house to begin the process of trying to get someone who understands what you're going through and can try to help you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot out there, and I'm glad that people are starting to recognize that, because like I said, I feel like I just see so much breakdown, I feel like, in people's minds that are just pushing them towards violence, pushing them towards taking their own lives, or I don't know. I mean, God, I see a lot even on, with people with road rage, is how quick to snap somebody is from be able to go from 0 to 10 in a matter of a second is insane to watch. So it's like, I don't know what's going on in their life. There's probably a lot of bad stuff also happening. That's how you got from 0 to 10. There's no way if you're having a great time in life, you can go from 0 to 10. That's weird.
Just out traveling overseas in another country, and the pace of everything was so noticeably slower there. I'm not saying they don't have stress in Europe and they don't have people who are panicking in Europe, but everything, even the meal, especially the meals, take so much longer. And I so appreciated that, because now that I'm back, and I was with some of my family the other night having dinner, and I realized, holy crap, we ate in no time flat. Like, it was so opposite of how we were doing things there. And the benefit of I'm just giving a little example of a slow, long meal where you're sitting around a dinner table and having a chat with people. And here, I really felt the stress when I came home, and I felt like slipped right back into it of eating fast to get cleaned up from dinner fast, and the stress that builds. We don't take that time. We don't take stock. I have to remind myself, just like everybody else, about how to slow down and about how to breathe the fresh air and how to create time for just resting, to get away from electronics and all those kinds of things.
Wholeheartedly agree. 1,001% with you on getting outdoors. One of my favorite things to do is just seriously just go for a little hike in the woods. And we live in Philadelphia, but Wissahickon trails are very close. You can find, Pennypack Park, anything like that. Honestly, even just doing the loop, the 8-mile loop from front of the art museum, and then back around. It's really nice because you get Boathouse Row, you got just people. Yeah, you got more cars, but honestly, like, if you want to put headphones on, honestly, that's the great thing to do. Put on some of your favorite music and go for a hike.
Exactly.
And I'm telling you, you'll feel so great when you get back to your car. Like, I know that I would.
Yeah. The other thing I see a lot lately is alcohol use. I think people. This is a generalization, of course, and I don't saying it started in COVID, but I know COVID was a time when people were overindulging in food and drink. And I was just talking to some people recently who talked about their, post-COVID, few years out, obviously, still realize that their mental health, which is connected to their sleep, has really been affected by their alcohol use, and how dialing that back, making a commitment to that, because one thing feeds the other. The better sleep, the less irritability, the more patience you have. And so for some people, it may not be so obvious, but if you start looking at some of the clues about why you might be as stressed as you are or down as you are, make sure you take a look at what you're drinking and eating, and how those pieces of the puzzle fit into the equation.
Absolutely. Same here. I know if I've drank too much, or what was it that I drank? Was there a lot of sugar? And usually I'm telling you, I know that my body now, as I'm getting older, sugar is, me and sugar are not friends anymore.
I hear you.
Like, at all. Especially like, I like sweet stuff and whatnot, like candy and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I unfortunately, I think I'm a sugar addict, because if I buy more than one bag of, let's say, gummy worms, I eat an entire bag of gummy worms. I have a second bag in there.
Yeah.
Well, I can't save that.
Yeah.
My brain goes, no, you want more.
Yeah.
Sugar.
There is no.
And there's that chatter. Mind chatter comes back in.
Yeah.
Sugar? Ooh, get it. And then I do it, and then I feel awful the next day, like I'm hungover, but not from alcohol, but like a sugar.
Yeah. Asking people yourself, what are you sort of addicted, even if it's not a formal addiction, but what are we addicted to?
Absolutely.
What are we attached to in a healthy way? And then what are we addicted or attached to in an unhealthy way? Phones, of course, are also part of that equation, and in addition to alcohol, sugar, right? So
I forced myself. Well, actually, I discovered a friend of mine and I used to paint pewter miniatures back in high school. We used to play Dungeons and Dragons a lot, so we used to paint them on and stuff like that. I had recently, like 2 years ago, bought a board game, and it came with these amazingly high detailed 3D printed miniatures, and my mind immediately went right back to my childhood. And the excitement came in. I literally went on Amazon, bought paints, bought brushes. I was like, we're going to do this. You remember how to do this, man. You remember what you were doing.
Yeah.
And I painted them, and they actually came out better than I ever painted anything ever when I was younger. And I was like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
I hadn't painted in over 20 years.
Yeah.
And then now, $500 later on Etsy,
Oh, no.
and many display cases now in my room, I have now painted like 50 different types of 3D printed creatures, monsters, things, and mainly horror type stuff, because I draw to that because it has so much amazing detail, even though it's gross. It's just got a lot of fun detail to paint.
Yeah.
And I found it got me off phones,
Oh, there you go.
playing video games,
There you
getting
go.
off just get off screens,
There you
play
go.
music or a podcast, and I
you
sit
go.
up there for 4 hours, 5 hours go by, and I'm painting.
Yeah.
The only thing that I kind of suffer from is now bad posture.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's
Like,
the thing.
oh, why does my neck hurt?
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm so happy that I found that again.
That's
in
what
my life.
everyone needs to throw. What can I find or rediscover, even from youth, right? The things that sort of drew you in, even as a child.
Yeah.
I think that's important because the phones have drawn us into a way. I know I could relate to that example. I'm trying to now get into the guitar and play music, get myself away. That just brings me peace and joy, and whether how good I am at it is secondary to just growing and learning, while I play.
Absolutely. Now, you did write a book.
Yes,
What-
did.
What is the title of the book?
It's called Courage Over Confidence, Managing Mind Chatter, which we've all talked about today, and Winning the Mental Game.
And where can people find your book? Where can
I would
they
say the
purchase it?
best place to go is Amazon. It's on Amazon now. There's a soft cover, a hardcover, and hopefully in my audiobook, which I'm recording now, will be ready in just a few weeks.
Awesome.
So for those of you who just like to listen to it. So it's readily available online, and I thank you for the opportunity to talk about what's in the book and all these other topics as well.
Absolutely. And where can people find you on social medias?
So my website is greenepsych.com, GREENEPSYCH.com. So that has a lot of information about my practice in addition to me. And then on Instagram, it's Greenepsych, as is Facebook, Greenepsych Sports Psychology. So you can find me in those places. We're pretty active posting, particularly on Instagram and Facebook. So follow along and hopefully you'll get something from what we're putting out there.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Greene, I really appreciate your time.
I
It was
appreciate it.
very cool to see you again
Yeah,
in person. Thank
that's
you
the best
so
part
much.
of it. Thank you.
Absolutely. I know we had some of these struggles with the schedules and whatnot, but hey,
We got
we
it.
got it down, and I think that's the reason. Like, you know what? I think the interview might not have gone that good if we had it scheduled that day, right? There was a reason why it got pushed all the way to
think
today,
that way.
right?
I like to think that way. I like that way of thinking.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you guys for watching USALA Media's another amazing exclusive video. And please, 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 buy the hardcover. All right? Buy the hardcover.
I'll take anything.
All right, guys. We're out.
Thank you.